Rev, you posted a Washington Post article on your Instagram titled, "If Sharpton is a loudmouth, Trump is so much worse." Now, I want you to break that down for me. I'm thinking about over the course of the last few days, last few weeks, we've seen even more from Trump than I had seen before. I mean, having dinner with white supremacists don't shock me, but the fact that it's so public, is a little bit surprising to me that they let that out. What should we make of Donald Trump right now at this moment in history, based on everything we know?
I think Donald Trump has become unhinged. The fact that he has seen now major leaders in his parties openly reject him, openly attack him, and the fact that most of the people he endorsed in the midterm elections lost. He is like a guy who is on the stage still singing and the audience is leaving. The pop camera lady's gone, the ushers are gone, and he's still screaming and hollering on stage. It would be sad if it wasn't him. So he's unhinged. For him to sit down with Kanye and then call him a troubled man, well, who are you, his therapist?
Right.
And to sit up there with a white supremacist and say he didn't know who he was. First of all, Mark, I've met with former presidents, Bill Clinton, Barack Obama, in all kinds of circumstances. You don't meet with them without giving the names and social security numbers of who you bring in with you. And they vet them because they still have a Secret Service detail, even as former president. It may be smaller, but they got to clear everything for security reasons. He had to know who the guy was, and they had to have the background check of who he was. But even if he didn't, let's give him all that fail for whatever reason. He still has not denounced the guy. He still has not said that the guy is wrong and I would have never had dinner with him and how dare him come. He still hasn't done that. And according to Hugo, who wrote an article in the Guardian, he interviewed people around Trump. Trump saying, I can't do that because of a large part of my base. So he's admitting his base is basically racist and anti-Semites and all. And I think that we should not underestimate him because he tapped into something that he knew was there. He grew up around it, like I said, in LoudMouth. And they are still going to support him, even though the establishment Republicans are now trying to slowly get away from him.
But the thing is, it worked before. When he tried to stand near David Duke, or David Duke tried to stand near him, however you look at it, and people said, including Chris Christie, hey, you got to denounce some of these folk. You got to denounce the white supremacists who are standing next to you, just like Reagan did with some extremists in his party back in the 80s. And Trump said, according to at least the resources we have in the books that came out, like Confidence Man, he said, look, let's not rush to do that. These people vote too. And I thought that was a cynical play. I thought that it was a dangerous play. But he messed around and became president.
Absolutely.
Is it possible that he could do it again?
It's very possible, especially if you have a crowded Republican field like they did in 2016. He wins by plurality the nomination, and they all coalesce around him. We should not sleep on his continued viability, which is why we need to really mobilize and make sure these election laws are right. Because let's not forget the turnout we're beginning to see even in the runoff in Georgia is even despite some suppressive laws. We got to knock them out, and we've got to take the threat of Donald Trump seriously. We laughed in 2016. We said there's no way he's going to beat Hillary Clinton. I mean, we were at the Javits Center waiting for the Hillary victory party and was stunned when he lost, when he won. He can do it again if he catches us sleeping. And I think that we can't afford to take anything for granted.
Is there anybody else in that Republican camp you think could do it? I mean, DeSantis is the name that obviously comes up as the heir apparent. Some people say he's even more dangerous because he's a little more polished. He's a little less, he brings a little less baggage with him. Others say he can't win a national election. Some people look to Nikki Haley. Is there anybody on the Republican bench that you think could actually be the next president?
I think that I think I would not underestimate DeSantis or Haley because they are more polished and their policies are to the right of Trump. Don't forget, Ron DeSantis is the one that was banning books with critical race theory. That there was no critical race theory being taught in Florida, but anything that would deal with slavery or black history, he was banning. He has overseen a lot of the voting restrictions there. what I find very interesting is why hasn't the media, and I said this on MSNBC, why hasn't the media asked DeSantis to denounce Trump having dinner with a Nazi in his state? In his state, in Florida. You haven't seen DeSantis release a statement attacking Trump. You haven't seen Nikki Haley release it. She was the governor of South Carolina during the massacre in Charleston. So the media is being very selective in who they're pressing on this. If they want to run for president, this is the opportune time to distinguish between them and Trump. Hit them on having dinner with a Nazi. We've heard nothing. They both have had political laryngitis.
I like that, laryngitis. Who on the left can do something here? I mean, I understand we have a standard bearer. We have a President Joe Biden, and we have Kamala Harris. When you look beyond them and beyond this upcoming election, are there other people on the Democratic bench who either should be groomed or who are in preparation for carrying the party forward beyond the next election?
I think that you've got to look at Westmore now, who won big for governor of Maryland. There's some coming in the Congress that you're going to have to look at, even this young man, Max Frost. I think that there is a lot of talent, and I think that we need to not only groom them, but give them the room to grow. But I think it comes both ways. I think you've got to give people the room to grow, and they've got to understand that to grow, you need to talk to people that have been there that can give you the right advice. One of the regrets I have in life, when I was young, I used to try to fight my mentors, and I understood now that they was really saving me from mistakes. If somebody been down the road and tell you watch out for them potholes, you're not being independent to bust your behind in the pothole. You being stupid because they told you to watch out for them potholes. So we've got to find a balance between those of us that have gotten older and those that are younger, where we can advise and counsel, even in my own organization, National Action Network, without getting in the way of their innovation and creativity. And I think that if we can strike that...
Rev, let me ask you something about that, Rev. Are there some mistakes that people just got to make on their own? You know, because I try and give advice to young activists, young organizers. I think about Ferguson forward. And some stuff I told them and they said they were going to listen, and then they did it the wrong way, and then they just had to learn. I mean, is it one of them soft, hard head make a soft behind things too?
I think some of being older and mentoring is accept that they're going to reject it in some cases, and you're going to have to let them learn the hard way. But your job is to tell them and to still be open when they come back and say maybe you were right, or they may never come back. But I had a conversation one day with Reverend Jackson, who was one of my mentors. And Reverend Jackson was 12 years younger than Dr. King. King kind of grouped him. I was 13 years younger than Reverend Jackson. I used to say, I'm the generation behind you. When he was entering college, I was just entering the first grade. That's a generation to me. And he said, you know what you got to understand, Al? And I've never said this publicly, but it really, really went through me. He said, maybe I am too hard on you. Maybe my stuff is tough. He said, but my generation was the first generation that adjusted to living past 40. Dr. King got killed. Malcolm got killed. Many others got killed, all at 39. He said, we had to learn how to get old. He said, we didn't know how to become old activists. So I'm trying to download a lot to you, because I woke up one morning at 50 and I never thought I'd see 50. And that really got to me. I'm only the second generation of civil rights leaders out of the church that ever knew what their grandchild looked like. They never saw that. And I think we forget that, how vicious they were. King, Malcolm, Medgar Evers never saw their 40th birthday.
Wow. That's chilling to hear, man. Rev, stay right here, everybody. We'll be right back with Reverend Al Sharpton after the break. Welcome back to theGrio. We have been spending the hour with Reverend Al Sharpton. His new documentary, LoudMouth, it hits the theaters this Friday. You do not want to miss it. Rev, you were just talking about following the leadership of your mentors and also sometimes not listening to it, pushing back against them. What's the biggest thing you wish you'd listened to from one of your mentors?
I wish that I had been more careful with how I would say things. Not to be worried about what outsiders thought, but the amount of my own people that got more concerned with the delivery than trying to deal with the deliverables. Because sometimes you got to not play to the what Mrs. Coretta Scott King said to me, the cheap seats, and play to the whole crowd, so that people can feel that what you're saying is as much substance as it is hype. And sometimes, I grew up, my generation, generation ahead of yours, was Spike Lee and Russell Simmons. All of us grew up around the same time, within 2 or 3 years of each other. So I grew up in that swagger age with rap music getting ready to go to hip hop. And we just didn't care. But you do have to care. Because if you really want to serve our people, you got to care about what you deliver to them, what you say to them. And caring doesn't mean showing how defiant you could be. Sometimes it could be about how you can present it in a way that all of your people can embrace it and understand that we need to move a certain way.
How hard is it to show that level of care with the people when sometimes the people, the very people you're trying to save or support or help or heal or protect, are fighting you back? They're talking about you. They're mocking you. They're dismissing you. They're selling you out. How hard is that?
It's real hard, and you see that in the movie movie LoudMouth. And I guess the way that I've had to deal with it is by being mentored by people that went through the same rejection and studying people. I was prepared for it. To lead in our community, who has been trained since slavery to eat up and try and reject those that fight you. You need to understand that's just going to happen. If we were trained in self-hate, anyone that does not hate us and cares for us, we hate them because they're reflecting on us when we never felt we were deserving. I'll never forget in 2007, a reporter came to me and said, "Do you know your great-grandfather's name?" I said, "No." So we did research, Black History Month, we did some ancestral checks. Your great-grandfather was named Coleman Sharpton, and he was a slave in Ellenville, South Carolina, by a man named Alexander Sharpton. I went down there, Press went with me, and sure enough, there was a Sharpton plantation owned by Alexander Sharpton, who ironically was married to the first cousin of Strom Thurmond, who was later to be born and was a segregationist. And it hit me as I was walking around that plantation that every time I write my name, I'm writing the owner of my great-grandfather. I don't know my name. My great-grandfather didn't know his name. We're writing our ownership papers. That's where we got our names from. So when a people have been taught how to hate themselves, they're not going to embrace you, because they've been taught to anybody that reminds them of their worth is counter their progress, they're told. You can't do that. You're a troublemaker. You're a loudmouth. What is wrong with you talking back to those people? And if you accept that that is the training, then you can accept that you're going to have to take that until you get them out of that, because somebody had to get you out of it.
Now, that sounds great from a philosophical perspective, but, you still a Negro from Brooklyn. I'm still from North Philly. Forgiveness that takes some work. That takes some moral work, some spiritual work. How hard is it for you to forgive those folk? And I'm not just talking about the everyday person that don't know you. I'm talking about your peers, your leaders, other preachers, other activists, other civil rights people who at some point from the 60s till now has been less than brotherly to you.
I can tell you it's very hard. And I struggle with it to this day. I'm better than I was, but it's a struggle because you say you know better. You know me. I've been out here too long. And there is no logic to it. And that's the cross that you just have to bear. And I think that I've gone home many nights saying, I'm through with them. Don't ever call me, and I'm finished. And I get up the next day and say, but if I'm finished, then I'm really aborting my own calling and mission, not theirs. And I try again. And some I'm convinced I may never be able to reconcile with, but I don't want it to be said that I didn't try. And at the end of the day, Mark, we all going to have to leave here, and it's the record you leave, not the record you tried to leave. And I want my record to say I always reached out, even if I got my hand slapped back in my face.
How much of that is your faith? How much of that is you being a Christian, you being a minister? Does that make it easier, or at least help you make sense of how this stuff
All
happened?
of it is my faith, because in the end of the day, my faith tells me if God could forgive me for some of the stuff I've done, and I ain't talking about stuff you read in the New York Times, I'm talking about stuff I know I was wrong and didn't tell my best friend. If God can forgive me, how could I be so unforgiving?
Wow, that is a power. God's still working on me, Rev. So I got. I might have to call you for some counseling, because some of these Negroes I just give up on it. I block the number. I walk away. I don't do nothing bad to them, but I just can't. I can't. I struggle with that. And maybe with age and maturity, I'll change.
Well,
But it's hard out here.
Yeah, it's hard, and just you can block the number, because I have somebody blocked, but don't block your heart. I'm still open to talking, and I'm gonna be honest. I didn't get there years ago. It's still a work in progress, because it's hard enough to fight the adversary. You got to fight folks that's on your side that know better, that know you. It's hard, but if we chose our test, we would pass them all easily. One of the things you learn in school is the hard tests are the ones that make you go to the higher grade. We cannot pass a college test with a kindergarten curriculum. You got to pass the hard tests, and part of growing is you're going to have to deal with harder and harder assignments the higher you grow.